Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with us, nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And today we want to say, welcome to the zoo. The question is, what side of the cage are you on?
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
So we've gotten questions in the past, and fairly often it's like, how do you do planar adventures? How do you incorporate this into your game? You know, is there a way to do it without being like, okay, you're in sigil or seagull, depending on how you say it, and you starting from there. So we kind of were like mulling that around, and then there was this Twitter discussion that happened, over on Nerdarchy's feed about using a bunch of different reptilian creatures, and the idea, how would you play that in a game? And the idea was floated out there of a cosmic terrarium. Because let's face it, we've got kobolds, we've got turtles, we've got dragonborn, we got lizard folk, we got Yanti. So you could put together a sizable reptile party without even doubling up on any of your reptiles.
Absolutely. So I'm like, well, if we have this terrarium, what about making a interplanar zoo as opposed to having the first venture or the start of the campaign happening off the prime material plane? You could bring planar travelers to the prime. And one such example could be, this powerful, owner of this zoo. So for whatever reason, whether it's an item, whether he's a powerful caster, they've got plane shift and they move around the multiverse, the multiplanes, and they show off all these variety of creatures and things that it's captured or paid for or what have you. And there's a number of different ways that you could use this in your game.
There's a lot of things you could do. One, we could look at the MCU and Marvel. The Collector is someone who kind of would fit this bill instead of being objects. Well, he wasn't strictly objects, because we did see Howard the Duck in there. But, someone that focuses more on a zoo. This could be some kind of fiend or devil or demon. This could be a celestial creature. They may see what they're doing. They're doing the good work of preserving all these different things so that, so it won't go away. And, the small price of usurping a sentient being's freedom outweighs, the evil that's being done, depending how they see things. It could be several ways of doing this. You could do it where the zoo moves, or maybe the gates to get to the zoo move. So you could have fun with it. That you could do the whole Kandar, city in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
It could be more, instead of a zoo, it could be more like a circus where, it just roams. It's this cosmic caravan with where all the cages are wheels, and they on wheels like wagons, and it just gets pulled across the cosmos going to new areas. Maybe this being goes out and collects creatures and specimens to put in. Maybe he has other people that do that for him as hunters.
So what is the main point at doing this kind of thing? I mean, we talked about that this is a way to introduce more planar travel, but it's also a way that you can introduce new things to your world, whether you want your players to see interesting creatures, learn new languages, meet people that look absolutely nothing like them. It's a way to just go hog wild with your descriptions and your narrations, and you can have a lot of fun with it. There's also, if you've got somebody who wants to be something that's odd and they want to join the game, but you have no way of really getting them in there, well, perhaps they're part of this zoo. Maybe they work there. Maybe they're escaped from this kind of thing. There's a lot of different ways that you can use this to, further, the story or the player's goals or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This could be foreshadowing to things to come. Maybe you want to put an epic monster such as the Tarasque in your game at some point, and you want to showcase and show off a Tarasque. And if you're your players encounter one in the zoo where it's contained, well, what happens if it ever were to get out? For instance, it may end up on a Nerdarchy shirt, like the Tarasque Park shirt, which you can find over on the Nerdarchy store, as featured here, and many different colors. Go check it out. So in the Interplanar Zoo, there's different ways you can use it. One, we could be like, oh, you're a guest, you get special tickets somehow. Like, I almost feel like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You could totally run that kind of scenario where the adventuring party gets the golden ticket and they go there, and then they're really stuck with all these moral quandaries of what to do with all these creatures and species that have been trapped away. And what do you let the Tarasque out? No, you probably don't. But is it right to keep it a prisoner and captured? I don't know. So that is one way of doing it. Another would be, well, you all wake up and you're in a cell. You're on display. He has everything he's wanted except for a real live adventuring party to show off in his zoo, and now he's got one.
So you wake up to the crowd sitting there, of bizarre creatures that don't look exactly like you. Perhaps you've already moved on from the prime material plane. Maybe you're in the astral, or maybe you're in some alternate prime, and whatever it is that you're seeing, they don't look quite like you, and they're oohing and ahhing as you guys are, coming to, and it's like, what the heck? And it's the start of an adventure. How do you get out? What do you do? Do you try to have conversations with the guests? Do you try to talk to your caretakers?
Yeah, absolutely. You wake up and you ain't in Kansas anymore, Toto. So that is definitely something you're going to have to deal with. Will the people interact with you? Do they ignore you? Do they try to throw things at you through the bars, if there's even bars? And, we've seen this trope time and time again in science fiction. Mm-hmm. I'm fairly certain we've seen it in Star Trek. They did it. They kind of did an episode on it on the Orville. So there are just a couple that I think of off the top of my head, and I'm sure there's many more. We also we thought of the idea of the cosmic terrarium, which we might still get someone to run yet. And what if all these different species are kind of grouped in this containment habitat area so that it looks and feels like where they would normally be from? So they're like, oh, well, turtles and snakes and little lizard creatures and little dragon creatures and lizard guys. We put them all in one happy home, and it'll feel like home to them. They'll have companionship and they'll be able to flourish. But these are sentient creatures, and they might want to have other plans. And it gives it's a great starting point, right? We talked about how do you do a planar adventure, a planar campaign. You take the players from wherever they're from, you slap them in this prison scenario, right? It's a common trope for D&D.
Oh, absolutely.
You all start in the prison, but with a twist. The twist is, well, you have no idea where you are. It's strange and odd. Maybe you actually have adventures in your captivity before you can even get out, because who's to say it's just a little cell? It could be a plane that goes on, and they have magical scrying, and that's actually how they observe the different species. And if they say have, these humanoid reptiles, if we're going with the cosmic terrarium scenario, in this specific area, well, maybe there's other things, like a giant crocodile, right? And the giant crocodiles have no respect for anything, and they're not going to care that they're messing up the terrarium by eating the other creatures in it. They're just going to see something, they're going to eat it. Crocodile, death roll, and next thing you know, the auntie's head's coming off. Or maybe that's the whole point, right? The curator, the zookeeper, zoologist has decided to put you in, and you're the food. And then you survive, and it's like, oh, I guess you're now the exhibit. We need to get some more of those giant space crocodiles to throw in here. And there might be other threats as well, and areas to explore. So you might spend a session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions just exploring your captivity. That's just something off the top of my head.
You could literally have an entire story arc where you could have 6 or 7 sessions of just to get out. You could have all of this exploration, all of this role playing, and of course there's possible combat of the things that might want to eat you or might want to defend its territory, because it's still going to have its natural feelings, its natural instincts.
Well, what about 6 sessions of you don't even know you're in captivity? You just know you're in someplace different, and you're like exploring it because maybe the magical nature of these cells of these cages is like these little demi-planes that they can scry on. And like like as a GM, you can also leave little clues and make it like a mystery, where like, oh, well, you find something that doesn't belong there, or
you get to an edge, like there's nothing there, but yet you feel a wall, like you're at the glass.
You could do that, or you go through and you find yourself in a familiar area, like where it just moves you back to the other side. So you kind of like end up going in circles, and after a while, you're like, oh, wait a minute, something's changed here. Or you could do something to change the area, and you walk through, come out the other side, and go through again, and be like, oh, this is different now. So so you could definitely do things like that. From there, we'd also have to come up with this. Probably the head zookeeper, the owner of this place, and what kind of powerful interdimensional being would be able to do this and pull it off and have the magic. And then you would think they would probably also have like the keepers that would maintain.
Yeah, your curators, the ones that come in to feed you and clean up, and again, they would have to be somewhat powerful to be able to kind of keep people back. They have to be knowledgeable. Maybe they consider you their friend, but you're still beneath them because you're just an animal. You're just an exhibit. They care about you. They want to see you thrive, but they want to keep you in.
Yeah, I don't know they have to be powerful. I mean, a normal zookeeper doesn't really have much on a lion, tiger, or bear.
That's true.
They do have knowledge and information and sentience, but they don't have those other attributes. So you could create also moral quandaries and dilemmas and role playing scenarios with these keepers that maybe it's not something to fight, or they could overcome them fairly easily, but it's like they still don't know where they are. They still don't know how to get out of here. The keepers may even be pleading with them to stay because they don't want to see them. They don't want to see them get harmed if they try and escape, because then they'll have to send hunters out for them, and whether that's other people that get hired for that job, if there's specific creatures for it, or constructs.
That's a whole another avenue of ways to use this particular thing. You could have adventures where something has gotten out, and you as the players are approached by someone that's attached to the zoo and say, hey, can you help bring this in? Or it could be, well, there's something new that they found on this plane that doesn't exist in the zoo, and they want you to bring one in alive. So there's many different ways to use it on that regards.
Well, yeah, and that could be just the start, and you take the contract and do it, like, oh, okay, that's no big deal. And then you get there and you make delivery of the creature, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, that's a person in one of those cages, or people in those cages as well.
Right.
And then the players might have a moral quandary of, oh, wait a minute, this isn't just animals and monsters and beasts they're keeping. They're keeping all kinds of things, and the pay's really good, but I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know how this sits with me.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as you brought up, hunters could be player characters. They could be other humanoids. They could be constructs. There's many different ways that this can all be twisted, used, and inserted into a game.
So the question is, will you use this in your game? How are you going to use it? Hopefully we inspired you for some ideas for your future adventures to play, or perhaps the next player character you want to play could come from these ideas. We got a place where we can talk about and discuss it. That is down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.